Hello everyone, in this tutorial we will create a custom user model. And the reason why we would do that is because we need to extend our user model and have more control on it. At the moment, the user model is basically just a username, email, password, and we need to add more to that. And in order to do that, we need to create a new app in our Django project and name it, for example, users app. So let's do that. First, let's activate the virtual environment. And then let's navigate to our project folder, my API, and inside here we need to start the new app, which is the user or users app. And to do that, we can basically say python manage.py start app, and we'll name it users app, or I think user app will be okay. And if you notice here, we managed to create a new app which contains the necessary folders and files. So now to start structuring our custom user model, let's go to models.py, and inside here we need two classes. First one is the user manager, and that will inherit from base user manager. And the second class is the user class. And this will inherit from abstract, base user, and permissions mixin. Okay, so the first class is responsible for the user object creation and the fields needed for that. And the second one is basically the user model, or the fields that we need to add to the user model. So let's start with our user manager class. And inside the user manager class, let's create a private method, which is the create user method that will handle the user creation. So we'll type create user, and inside here we'll add all the necessary arguments that are needed for the user creation. Okay, so we'll start by username, sorry for that, email, password, and we can specify some fields like for example, if this user is a staff member, is the user super user, or is the user active, not active. So we can specify that also here, so we can basically add more fields like is active, for example, or is staff, and is super user. And at the end we'll add an argument for extra fields that we might need to add to this user. Okay, And inside this method, let's do some validation and specify some information. So say first let's check if the user is valid. And to do that, we can simply say if not user, which means if the user is not provided, we need to raise an error, which is a type or value error. Okay, so we'll say value error, and we'll say the given in user name is not valid. Okay, and the second field we need to check, or argument that we need to check, is the email. So email equal, and we need to use something called normalize email, and that will convert all the domain part of the email to lowercase. And now we can create the user by saying, or the user model by saying user equals self.model, and inside here we can specify the arguments. So we say username equal username, email equals email, and we're not going to add, we're going to skip the password now, because we can use another way to set the password outside of the model, outside of this function here. So we can set the other specifications, like is this user active? So we choose to decide if it's active now or not. So maybe we can just leave the user, or the user won't be active until they verify the email. Then we set this field to active, and for example, or you can put it true, and the user will be active immediately. This is just some, let's say, a checkpoint for you, where you can instead, for example, after you create the user, let's say the user is not using your website anymore. So instead of deleting the user from your database, you can simply set this field into false, which means the user is inactive. Or while the user is active, you can this field is like true. So you choose what to do with this. For example, the second or the other field or argument is staff equal, and then is superuser equal is superuser. So basically here we're just adding the arguments, and then we can specify some other fields here. For example, we can add the time when this user joined the website or signed up for the website. And to do that, we can just simply say, for example, date joined, and then we can, let's say, equal, for example, now, and then we specify now here, now equal time zone dot now. Okay, so this will give us the time, the actual time, and the last argument will be the extra fields. Okay, so now after we created the user object, we need to set the password dot set password, and this will take password as argument, and then we save the object user dot save. We specify this using the database. Okay, and then we return the user object. So The private method that we created is, I think it's complete now. So what we did, basically, we specified the arguments that we need for the user creation, and then we did some validation in it. We created the user object model with the needed fields or necessary fields, and then we set up the password, and then we saved the object and we returned the object. So in order to use this private method, we need to call it from a normal method inside our user manager class, and to do that we simply define a new method we call create user, and this method will take username, email, password, and the extra field argument. And inside the create user method, we need to call our private create user method, and then return the result or the user object created there. So basically we can say return self create user, and then we pass the argument username, password or email. Let's start the email, password. We can specify that is this user or is active. For example, if is active, then we set up this, for example, is active equal true. Is it staff equals, it's not staff, false. And is super user, and that's false as well. And let's check the sequence here. So username, password, yeah, is active, is staff, is super user, and then at the end we add the extra field. So I think that's it. I think that will do the job. Let's save this. So now we have the actual method to create the user, and we added the arguments that needed here. So this method will create a user, a normal user, like in the scenario where the user signs up to your service or website. This method here will be used. What we need to use now, what if we need to create a super user as in our API? So we need to define another method to create a super user, and this will take some arguments as well, like username, email, password, and extra fields. And inside here we'll say user equal, we'll use the private method create user and here we'll specify the username, email, password, and we'll simply say that this user is active, true, and is staff, true. For example, is super user, true, because this is a super user that we're creating. And we mustn't forget the extra fields argument. Okay, so After that, we need to save this object. And then we return the user object. Okay, so with that being done, I think we're done with creating the user manager class, which will be responsible for creating a new user and creating a super user as well. Okay, what's next? Let's head to the user class, and now let's add the user model fields inside the user class. And to do that, let's start by username, and the username is a char field, so we're gonna say models dot char field, and we'll specify the maximum length, which is let's say 30, for example, and then we'll say it's unique, and that means like two users, we can't have two users with the same username. Okay, and after that, the second field, we can add the email, and it's an email field, so it's models.email field, and inside the email fields we can specify the maximum length, which is going to be 250, for example, and it has to be unique. Okay, after that we can add like first name equal it's a chart field as well, and that will take maximum length 30. We can specify some other stuff here. For example, the user doesn't have to have first name and last name, so we need to add blank true, null true, because this field is not a crucial field. I mean, the user is not obligated to add a first name and last name. In this case, we can make it otherwise. Last name, do the same. Blank true, null true. And what else can we add? Okay, we can add the is active, and it's a boolean field, because is active, it's either it's true or false, so it's a boolean field, and we can add the default to false, or let's keep it true. Let's have it true as a default value. Is staff also boolean, and by default it's false. Is super user also boolean, and the default value is false. And so what other fields we can add here? We can add, for example, the date joined, the date that the user joined, and it's a date and time field, and we can give it a default value of time zone dot now. And what else we can add? We can add, for example, another boolean, like for example receive newsletter, for example. Okay, we can simply say receive newsletter, and we can specify this as a boolean, and we can, like, you know, ask the user if they want to receive a newsletter from our website, and if yes, then we change this value. What else we can add? We can add birth date, or the date of birth, and this is also date time field. And I think we should, because these are not compulsory, we should add like blank true, null true. We can do this also on the top. I'm just gonna copy, paste this. This is okay, this is okay, this is okay. Okay, let's leave it this way. What else we can add? For example, address. We can add address 1, address 2. We'll just say address for now, and it's a char field or character field, and we can specify the maximum length, for example 300, and paste this. It's not compulsory. Yeah, we can add other stuff, like for example phone number, for example. Okay, we can add like city, for example, city. We can add as much as we need to add or to specify about the user, and basically we just need to specify the fields, and all the extra fields here that we added, we are able to add it because also as you remember, we added extra fields here, so which means these fields are included plus the extra fields that we might add in our model. So basically we can add as much fields as we want to specify or to have more information, store more information about the user. We can add, like for example, about me, and this, I'll put this also blank and null. About me, for example, we can specify like text field. Okay, will be like, for example, let's say 500, and yeah, so we managed to add more fields, have more control in our user class or user model. what else I'm thinking of is like we can add even an profile image. And this will be models dot image field, and we'll set it to null true. Okay, so these are the fields that I could think of at the moment. You can edit it, you can add whatever you want. The next thing we need to do is to create an object instance of the user manager, and by doing that, objects equal the user manager class. And next we need to specify some settings variable, like the username field, and which is the user name, must be small letter, and we need to specify the required fields for the user object. The required fields is a list that we need to add, and for now I think email is the most important thing. And I think that's it, guys, for the user class. So we can save it now. After saving that, after we create the user manager and user class, let's import the necessary classes here, like base user manager and abstract user base. And to do that, we need to type this from so let's import it from Django dot contrib dot auth dot models. We need to import permissions maximum, and I think I misspelled it here. Yeah. Okay, and then let's import the base user manager Django Django dot contrib and abstract base user. So these are the main. The other thing we need to import is the time zone. So from Django dot utils import time zone. Okay, because we needed to create the join date. Let's save this file. So I think that will do it. The next thing we need to do is we need to go to our setting.py, the project settings file, and specify and tell our project or API that we need to use this model here as our user model. Okay, so how to do that? Let's go to settings. So here inside the settings.py, we need to scroll down. First, let's add the user app to our apps here. so to make sure it will be installed. And let's head to the bottom here and specify the auth user model. So we'll need to type auth user. Okay, let's make it all capital. Auth user model, and it must be the user app dot user, and that tells the API that we need to use the auth user model from the user app dot user, which means it'll go to the user app, which is here, and then it'll go to the models and use this user here, user class. Okay, and after that, inside REST framework here, we need to add the serializer. Okay, so what we need to do is type here user details serializer. Okay, and this will tell our API to use the serializer and the app that we created. So it's inside user app, so lowercase user app dot serializer dot, and serializer will be, I'll name it user details serializer. So it's user details serializer. So I think we should go create the serializer now. Okay, let's save it, and let's go to our user app. Let's create a serializer.py here, new file. And inside here, I'm just gonna copy and paste the code just to save time, because there are a lot of typing here, and then I explain what's going on. So first thing first, we have two classes here, the register serializer and the user details serializer. This user details serializer will be used to serialize the data that we post and get from into our API, and the register serializer will be used when we register a new user. Okay, so inside here, as we see, we specify the normal fields using the serializer from REST framework, and we specified the email, which is the email field, and we said we pass here an argument saying, so required here, if it's required or not required, that depends on the settings. Okay, so this argument here, if we just copy this and we move to our settings and we go here and specify that account email required, and then we set this to true or false, whatever we put here is what will be the settings for the email field. Okay, first name, second name, also we can specify if they are required, not required, if they are write only, write read, all that restrictions that we can put to each field of the fields that we can or we need to add here. Okay, we can add more fields, like as I added here, first name, last name, address. I can add the city. I can do the restrictions. Okay, any of the fields that we use in our user model. Password 1, password 2 are required as well, because you need to provide password and verify the password. What else? Then we have some validation methods. So first one will be validating the password to see if the password is it short, does it contain for example only numbers, or does it have numbers with characters? So is it a common password or not? This will be validated here, and according to that we raise an error or a warning or other messages to the user. And inside validate also we can validate if the password 1 equal, or does it equal password 2, so because both passwords must match, and if not we can raise a validation error as you see here, and send it back to the user. And custom sign up, we're not going to address this in this tutorial, so we can get rid of it. And the get cleaned data will give us all the data from the fields, or the cleaned or validated data. And then we head to save in the Serializer save method. And the save method is what's happening here simply is we creating a user object, and then we using the adapter to get a clean data, and then after that we save the user object through a request, and we return the object. That's it. That's all. And inside the user details serializer, we specify the user model and the meta class meta, which is user, and the fields that we need to our serializer to deal with when we perform a post or get request or other requests. And these are the fields that we added there, basically the first name, last name, address 1, 2. I didn't add address 1, 2. Maybe I should delete this. Let's check the model. I added only address, so we can add the address. Phone number, I didn't add it, so you can add it, guys. Country, city, all that stuff you can add. I added city, about me, profile picture, also zip code. All these guys are fields that you can add there and then use it, but I'm gonna keep it short here. And basically that's the serializer. And now guys, let's add the user model to the admin.py. So let's import it first from .models user, and then we register it admin.site.register, and we put the user and we save. So now after we created the user manager, the user model, and we edit the settings to refer to the new user model that we'll be using, and we told our REST framework that the user details serializer will be in the user app directory serializer file, and added the app to our installed apps. Now what we need to do next is to run the make migrations and migrate to set up the database and add the new user table there, and then we can run the server and go to the admin panel and see the user there and how the configurations and code that we wrote reflected in our API. So let's do that. So we'll do python manage.py missed E here, And as we see, created user model or model user. And then now we migrate. And as we see, all the tables have been created. And now that we ran the migrations and we know that our custom user model table has been created in the database, let's create a super user and try to log in. So we type python manage.py create super user. And let's give it a name, admin, and email admin at myapi.com. Let's set a password. Let's verify the password. And now that the super user has been created successfully, let's run the server. And let's go to the browser and try to log in. Okay, let's navigate to the admin and let's say admin. Let's put the password, and here we go. We managed to log in with the super user that we created. And if we look here down, we see the user app that we created, and inside here we can check the users. And this here is the admin user, and if we go add user, we can see here that we have extended the user model into more practical and more advanced user model. And as we see here, we have all the fields that we added into our custom user model, like as the first name, last name, as active staff, and as super user, plus the date joined. And we also the receive newsletter, birth date, all of this useful information about our user now is accessible and editable. So that's it guys for this tutorial. I hope it was useful and you learned something new. And if you have any question, please leave it in the comment below. I try to make it as short as possible. If you're looking forward for more content like this and to learn more about Django REST framework, please subscribe, like, and share. And until the next one.